Okay, before we get started testing, I just want to briefly go over these tools and applications that we have installed on our system that you can install locally if you'd like to follow along. I have Notepad++ installed. It's a text editor application, and it will allow me to structure my XML requests correctly before I submit them to the system. So I'll be opening up the Module 2 Testing Web Services worksheet within Notepad++, and it will just allow me to easily view the XML and make sure everything is structured correctly before submitting the services. If you, for some reason, cannot install Notepad++, you can also use Notepad to open the Module 2 Testing Web Services worksheet. The next tool that will be necessary for our testing procedure today is Firefox, and within Firefox, we will be using the REST client add-on. Today I'm going to be using the Firefox Developer Edition, but the regular version of Firefox will work just as well. Both versions support the REST client add-on. So if we open up Firefox, we can take a look at the REST client add-on. The add-ons are visible usually in the upper right-hand corner here, unless you've configured your browser a little differently. If you don't have REST client already installed, you can simply search for REST client add-on within your browser, and it should pop up as the first search result. And this is the REST client application that we'll be using. The application itself allows you to send and receive web services using the URL and designated method. So those are the primary tools we'll be using during our testing process today. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first step in our testing process is creating our primary account. We'll go ahead and open up the Module 2 Testing Web Services worksheet document within Notepad++. And we can see that step 1, create an account, is using a post. So since we're adding data to the system, we're adding an account, we're using the post methodology. And then we can see that the URL is pointing to the WS test environment, which means we're pointing to the beta environment. Eventually, when we're approved for live, we'll be pointing to the WS environment. But in beta, we'll be using WS test, and then we'll also point to the account resource. Content type specified here is a required header. So we need to include a content type of application XML. So this basically tells the system what type of data we're submitting to the servers when submitting the web service. And then we have the XML body itself. So this is the information that we're passing to the system to create the account. Within the account block, we have various elements, such as username and password, whether it's a web services user, whether the account will be searchable or not. And then we have contact information, first name, last name, address, email, job title, phone. You can see that this is also a Canadian specific account. So the country's been defined as having a Canadian address. And then there's organization information. These are just details specific to the account's organization. And then we have the email preference Canadian account element. So this element is actually specific to Canadian accounts. And this element allows you to opt out of promotional emails sent by NRCan. So if you say true, then you will receive promotional emails by NRCan. If you say false, you will opt out of NRCan specific promotional emails. So we'll go ahead and take this account XML. And this is the information we'll be passing to the system through our web service. And we'll open up our REST client and we'll paste the XML into the body field. And then we can see that there are options here to select the method. Since we're adding data to the system, this is going to be a post. And then we also need to provide the URL. So the URL, again, is pointing to the test environment, WS test, and it's using the account resource. Okay, and it's also important that we remember to include the header information. So the header information, again, just defines what type of content this is that we're delivering to the system. We need to define the content type as application XML. So content type is application XML. And if you like to continue to use this content type, which I do recommend, you can just mark it as a favorite within the REST client, and then it'll show up as a favorited content type, so you don't have to continuously add this content type with each service. All the services use application XML as a content type, so it's a great one to select as a favorite. We'll press OK. And we will add the account. Okay, and our status code received back is a 201 created, so we have successfully created our account. We can see that within the preview tab, the response status is OK, and the system has provided us with an ID. So this is the account ID, and this is the ID that we'll be using for subsequent calls. So it's important that we save this ID, and we could save that within our testing worksheet. So our specific account ID that's returned back from the system, we'll go ahead and paste there so we can keep it for future reference. And our username that we used was sample John Doe, and you can change this username to whatever username you'd like. And then the password we applied to this account was sample123. So again, this is just tracking our username and password information. If you'd like to, write it down separately, however is best for you to remember your username and password information. There's actually no way to reset your password in the beta environment, so it's important that you keep track of these details. Okay, so that is our account. We have successfully created our primary account. So you may be wondering how we formulated this XML information. So to understand the details and the structure, the requirements of the XML that's passed to the system to create certain objects, we really need to dive into the schemas themselves. The schemas can be accessed through the API documentation homepage by visiting portfolio.energystar.gov/web services. If you navigate to the test environment, we'll be able to download the latest beta schema files by clicking this link. We can see in the bottom left corner of the screen, the link is actually pointing to 12.0, so that's the most recent code, and that's the most recent schema that's available within the beta environment. So I went ahead and I previously already downloaded these schemas, and I've accessed the account XSD file, or the account schema specifically. I'm using Altova XML Spy. You can use any other third-party tool. You can also use Notepad to open up the schemas if you do not have access to a third-party tool to view the schemas themselves. But this tool allows me to see the hierarchy of the account structure and see what elements are required for the account structure itself, the account complex type. We can see that there is an ID that's returned back from the system. And then we can see that a username and password is required and contact information is required. Within that contact information, there's various elements like first name, last name, email address, address and job title, phone, organization information as well, which includes other elements that we did pass to the system. Web services user, searchable or not. So all this information is defined within the schema. All the rules as to what information or what elements you need for your specific calls are defined within the schema. So if you pull out the schema within Notepad, you'll see something that looks similar to this. And if you'd like to know what the requirements are for a username and password pertaining to the amount of characters you can provide, we can see that the max length value is 60. And the minimum length value is 1 for your username. The password also has specific documentation defined. Must be at least 8 characters in length and contain 3 out of 4 of the following requirements. So this is good information to know if you're unable to pass in a password and the system continuously rejects it. You'll get an error message that says something similar to this. You can also identify, how long your password can be. It has to be 8 to 120 characters. If it was over 120 characters, the system would reject it. So all of the specific details and requirements are defined within the schema. So for the purposes of testing services today, I went ahead and created all of these example XMLs that can be used just to demonstrate how the services are delivered back and forth to the system and how we can create basic objects using web services. But if you're interested in really diving into the weeds, I highly recommend opening up the schemas and taking a closer look at them. In step 2, we will begin to manage the account that we just created, the primary account we created in step 1. To manage your account, we are going to be managing the data exchange settings specifically, and because we're editing a specific object, we are going to be using the put methodology. The content type remains as application XML, and because we have created an account, we are now required to pass in authorization. So the authorization information is equal to or equivalent to the username and password defined in our post account in step 1. So within this account, we want to tell the system which meter types we support. We also want to tell the system what our terms of use are. So our terms of use are visible to our customers when they connect with us, and they basically define the terms of our interactions between our entity and our customer. And this is just a text element that allows you to enter any terms of use that you feel are required when interacting with your customers. So I'll go ahead and take this data exchange setting block and we'll transfer it over to our REST client. And we can see again that our supported meter types are included, and these meter types are defined within the schema. So if you would like to support other meter types, please go ahead and access the schema and you'll be able to see which meter types are available. For the testing of today, we're just going to use electric, municipally supplied potable water indoor, and disposed trash. So we want to make sure we have our content type application XML defined. Yes, it's defined. And since we're editing our account, this is going to be a put. And the resource we want to point to is WSTest, which is our test environment, and data exchange settings. Okay, and we need to provide authentication, so that's going to be our username and our password. So our username we created, sample John Doe account, and our password is sample123. We'll submit the service. And we can see the system accepted that with a response status of OK and provided us a link. So the links allow us to quickly pull back the information that we previously posted. So this is the get URL for this data exchange settings. If we want to pull this information and see if the information was stored correctly, we can want to run a get on the data exchange settings. So we'll say get data exchange settings, which is equivalent to the link that's provided. Run a get. And we can see, yes, the system did store the information. Our terms of use are the way we had previously defined them. And our supported meter types appear to be displayed correctly. That completes step 2. We added our terms of use and we defined what meter types we support. In step 3, we'll create an account on behalf of our customer. So we'll create a customer account. Because we're creating an account, again, we're going to be using a post methodology. And instead of account, we're using customer. So WSTest/customer. Content type remains as application XML, as it will throughout any post of content to the system. authorization will be our primary account's username. So this is the account that we created in step 1, the account's username and password for the authorization. The account XML provided is very similar to the account information we provided when we created our primary account. The username we'll define for our customer will be Jane Doe sample 123. And our password will be sample 123. For Jane Doe sample 123 account, for this account, we are going to mark this account as a web services user. So it's important we mark this account as a web services user because when we submit simulated share requests, we'll be submitting them actually from our customer to our primary account. We have designated the searchable element as false. We also have the contact block, which includes first name, last name. Again, this information is very similar to the account information that was posted within step 1. So we'll take this XML content and we will provide it within our REST client. And since we're adding an account, we'll use the post methodology. Our authentication has been stored, and this is our primary account's authentication information. We will be posting a customer, and our content type remains as application XML. So again, our username and password for our customer is defined here, and our customer is marked as a web services user. And we'll go ahead and send this account to the system, and we can see the system accepted the information and provided us back with an ID. This ID is important to retain within our XML worksheet. Customer account ID will be this value ending in 2. And our customer's username and password, it's also important we retain this information. We can just store it up top here for easy access. Customer's username and the customer's password. And that concludes step 3, creating an account for your customer. The next step in testing web services is creating a property within our customer's account. So we created our primary account, we created a customer account. Now we want to create a property within our customer's account. So because we're creating an object in the system, we'll be using a post. The environment remains WS test. We're communicating with the beta environment. We're also defining that this property is going to a specific account, and we need to provide our customer's account ID. So this will tell the system which account to place the property that we want to create into. So the property will be created within this account ID specified. So from the previous call, when we added our customer account, we saved our customer's account ID. It's 268942. Your ID will be different for the customer you create, but you will need to provide that customer account ID within the URL to tell the system which account you want to add this property to. Content type remains application XML, and we need to authenticate into our primary account. So our primary account will be the username and password that we stored right here. And then we have the definition of our property, the XML content that includes all the details of the property itself. So our property name is defined as Broadway School. You can define the name as any various text that you'd like to provide. Again, if you want to know the requirements of the name and any limitations, please open up the property.xsd file or the property schema and take a closer look at the name element. We also have the primary function, the address, the year built, construction status, gross floor area, and it's also interesting to note that our units are in square feet, but you can also use square meters. The address defined in this XML is using a country code of Canada. And we've also included occupancy percentage and whether this property is a federal property or not. This property is marked as false, it's not a federal property. So we'll take this XML content and we will add it to our REST client. And since we're creating the object, we want to use the post. That's good. And we have the resource of account / and then the account ID of the customer that we created / property. We're still pointing to our test environment, WS test, which is beta. Take the URL. Use that resource, and then we will go ahead and we'll post this information to the system. Okay, good. The system accepted the XML. Everything was formatted correctly and provided us back with an ID. So this is a property ID. This is the ID that defines the unique property that we created for our customer. And we can also see that the link has been provided that allows us to pull the property that we had just created. So if you want to create an object and then you want to automate the ability to see if the object was successfully created, you can run a get by observing the response link provided. So we will go ahead and test this out to see if we have successfully created the property. So we can see that / property / property ID is the link that was provided. We can run a get. And we can see, yes, the property was created. We can also see that there's some more information that was provided to us when we ran the get. Specifically, we have access level, read-write, which is equivalent to full access. Because we created this property on behalf of our customer, our account has read-write access to the property. If you were shared a property, you may only have read access to the property. It depends on what share setting your customer had provided to you. There's also audit information. So this information will help you keep track of timestamps, who the property was created by, what account ID the property was created by, and the create date of the property, last update date, basically just audit information to give you more details specific to this property itself. Okay, so we have successfully created a property within Portfolio Manager within our customer's account. And because we created an object, it's important to maintain the IDs that are returned back from the system. So we'll take this ID and we will update our XML worksheet to include the property ID. In step 5, we will be creating property use information for the property that we had created in step 4. So we're creating this property use information on behalf of our customer for the property that we created on behalf of our customer. Since we're creating property use information, we are using the post methodology. And our URL will need to include the specific property ID to tell the system which property ID we want to add the property use to. In the previous call, we saved the property ID on top here. We'll take that property ID and we'll navigate back to step 5 and we'll update this URL to include the specific property ID that we want to add the property use information to. So property use information are basically the characteristics that define the operation of the property itself. So these characteristics for our K through 12 school are total gross floor area, open on weekends, yes or no, percent cooled, percent heated, number of computers, cooking facilities is high school, yes, no, months in use, school district, which is any string. And so again, these elements are defined within the schema, and this is just example XML. If you'd like to know what values can be used and what values cannot be used, really need to dive into the schema itself, and the schema can be accessed through the API documentation homepage. And the schema can be accessed through the API documentation homepage. So we'll take this XML content. We want to add property use information to the property that we created on behalf of our customer. Want to update the resource. We want to update the resource URL to point to the test environment or the beta environment, and tell the system which property ID we want to add this property use information to. Since we're adding a property use, we'll use a post. Content type remains application XML, and our authentication is still our primary account or our main account's username and password. We will post this information to the system, and we can see that because we created an object, the system generated a unique identifier for the object. For this property use, our ID is 10690517. Again, we have a link that was provided back to us to allow us to run a GET call on this property use. So we'll go ahead and run a GET call on the property use just to verify whether this information was created successfully or not. Okay, yes, we can see that the system has stored this property use information and has provided us back with audit information as to when the property was created and who it was created by. And each individual use characteristic actually has an ID. We won't be modifying these individual use characteristics within this testing strategy, but if you'd like to modify the values shown for each individual characteristic, you can reference the ID and run a put call on the property use characteristic or the property use detail. So more information on how to correct these use detail characteristics again can be found within the API documentation under the property use services and the use details section. So these are all the calls or the web services that you can call that use the property use details ID. So this use details ID is the same as the ID provided here. This is a use details ID. Okay, so we've added a property use for our property that we created on behalf of our customer. And again, it's important that we save the property use ID. Save this property use ID within our XML worksheet, in the top section. So we can pull this property use at a later time, or we can modify the property use at a later time. Now that we have created all property information for a property on behalf of our customer, we are ready to create meters. In step 6A, we'll create an energy meter. In step 6B, we'll create a water meter. In step 6C, we'll create a waste meter. Each of these calls will be using a post. We're adding data to the system. And we're still in the WS test environment, which is our beta environment. We're noting that we're adding meters to specific property IDs. So we'll need to insert in the ID of the property that we created on behalf of our customer. So we saved our property ID as this value ending in 4, and we'll update the URL here to point to this specific property that we created on behalf of our customer. So we can see that we are creating a meter. So the resource here is the property /17190234, which is our property ID, /meter. We're still in our beta environment. We're ready to create our meter. So we need to provide the meter XML information to the system. We'll be using a post. We need to tell the system which property ID we want to add the meter to. And we need to tell the system what the content type is, and we need to authenticate into our primary account when adding this meter. So I'll send this information, and we can see that the system created the meter and provided us back with an ID. Also provided us with a link that gave us the ID and the URL to access the meter. We can run a get on this URL link that was provided. And we can see that the meter was created. And the meter has an ID of 20875127. It's an electric meter. And there's also audit information. And we have successfully created our electric meter. We'll go ahead and save this electric meter's ID because we need this ID when we want to associate. We'll continue through step 6B. Again, the type of meter defined in step 6B is going to be a water meter, and we'll be using the municipally supplied potable water indoor type. And the name is unique and specific to whatever name that you would like. We'll go ahead and take this XML for our water meter. It's very similar to our electric meter. Post it to the system. We can use this same URL because this URL is basically just defining that we're creating a meter and we want to know the URL needs to define which property that we're creating the meter to. Okay, and we're ready to add our water meter. Okay, we've successfully added our water meter, and we'll save the ID of our water meter. And we are ready to add our waste meter. Waste meter is a little different than energy and water. Waste meter has its own schema. And instead of meter, we're actually adding a waste meter. The name defined is, again, any string or characters that you'd like to name. The type is schema specific. And this type, we'll be adding a disposed trash meter. We have a unit of measure of cubic yards. And our data entry method is regular container. So we're referring to a bin size, and our container size is 2. So we're using 2 cubic yards, looks like per month. So our first bill date is January 1st of 2000. So we'll take this waste meter data, and we'll add it to the body of the REST client, just as we've done for the electric and the water. And we will post the waste meter. The system has accepted the XML, and we'll go ahead and save the waste meter ID. Okay, and that concludes step 6, adding meters. In step 7, we'll be associating our meters that we created in step 6 to the property that we created on behalf of our customer. Associating the meters to the property allows the meters to be included within the property's metrics. If you do not associate the meters to the property, any meter data included within the property will not be included within the property's metrics. We can see that each individual type of meter, energy meters, water meters, and waste meters has its own block for association. When you're associating using this call, you could include only energy meters, only water meters, or only waste meters. If you include, it's important when using this listed association call that we include all meters of a specific type within each block. For example, if more than one energy meter existed for the property, we would need to include that energy meter within a listed format under the meters block. If more than one energy meter existed for the property, your call would look something like this. And then it would be energy meter 2. In this test property, we only have one energy meter, so we'll be associating a single meter within the energy meters association block. We'll also be associating a single water meter within the water meters association block, and a single meter within the waste meters association block. If, however, your property has 2 energy meters, and you submit a call that only includes one of the energy meters, this call will overwrite the association that was previously made for that energy meter. So again, for example, if you have 2 energy meters associated to the property, and you submit this call, and you only identify one of the energy meters within the energy meters association list, you will effectively remove the association for the second energy meter. So this is a comprehensive list, should be a comprehensive list of all of the energy meters within the property. If you only have access to one or more energy meters or partial access to the energy meters within the property, then you can submit a single meter association for that meter that you have access to the property. That call can be accessed in the Web Services API documentation homepage under the meters section. When we're associating meters to the property, we need to tell the system which property we'd like to associate the meters to. So that information is passed through using the property ID. So we'll take the property ID that we stored and the property ID of the property that we created on behalf of our customer, take that value, and we'll update the association step, step 7, with our property ID. And in step 6, 6A, 6B, 6C, we created an energy meter, a water meter, and a waste meter. So we need to tell the system what those meters are, and we do that by providing the IDs specific to those meters. So our energy meter we saved top here. And our water meter ID we saved as this value ending in 8. And then last is our waste meter. So this listed association call will tell the system which meters we'd like to include within our metrics, our performance metrics. So we'll take this information and we will paste it into our REST client. We'll take the URL that includes the property ID. And we're adding an association list here, so we'll be using the post call, post. And our authentication is we are authenticated through our primary account, and we're continuing to use application XML for our content type. We'll send the call, and the system accepted the association, and it's telling us to pull a list of the associations on the property. You can use the link provided. So we'll run a get on this link just to see the associations. Okay, we can see that yes, the system does have associations for the property we specified and includes the energy meter, the water meter, and the waste meter. So we've successfully associated our 3 meters to our property. In step 8, we are ready to add consumption data or billing information to our meters. For our energy meter, we'll be adding consumption data. For our water meter, we'll be adding consumption data. For our waste meter, we'll be adding waste data. So because we're adding data to the system, again, we're using a post. We're still pointing to our beta environment. We'll be using the resource URL of /meter/meter ID /consumption data. So we need to tell the system which meter ID we want to add consumption data to. We're first adding consumption data to our energy meter, which is our electric meter. So we'll copy the energy meter ID, navigate back down to step 8. We'll replace our energy meter ID with our electric meter ID, which is this value ending in 7. Our content type remains as application XML, and we are authenticating into our primary account. And we're adding this data to our customer's property on behalf of our customer. The meter data block includes information such as the meter consumption cost, the start date, the end date, and the usage. This is just the bare bones of information that can be added for an electric meter. If you'd like to know about other information that can be added to an electric meter, take a look at the API documentation homepage under the meters section. Within the consumption data section, there are various examples that show what type of information can be added for specific to consumption data. For example, this segment here adds green power, and this segment here adds demand. For the purposes of this presentation today, we'll be adding the bare bone information, which includes the cost, the start date, the end date, and the usage. So this is basic monthly consumption data information that we'll be adding to the system. This is 12 months of data. The Portfolio Manager system requires 12 months of data to report annual performance metrics, so we've included 12 months of data starting in January 1st of 2018. So we have a start date, goes from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2018. So we have 12 months of data within the year of 2018. So we'll take this meter data and we'll bring it over to our REST client. We have the URL that's pointing to our electric meter and stating we want to add consumption data. We're still pointing to our test environment. Since we're adding data, we'll change this to a post. We're authorized as our primary account. Content type is defined as application XML. We'll send the call. And we can see that the system has created each individual monthly meter consumption record and provided a specific ID for each record. So there's 12 IDs for 12 months of data that we added to the system. If we wanted to delete or edit specific months of billing data, we can run specific calls referencing these individual IDs. So those calls would be a put on a specific consumption data ID. We can also delete a specific consumption data ID. Okay, we have successfully added consumption data to our electric meter. In step 8b, we're ready to add consumption data to our water meter. The XML content is exactly the same as the content that we provided for our electric meter. The only difference within this call is that instead of our electric meter ID, we're going to be passing in our water meter ID within the URL. So let's update in our worksheet so we can stay organized. Our water meter ID, and we can add that to step 8b. And this is a post call. And we'll take this XML, which is actually the same as the XML above, but just for consistency, we'll take this XML. We'll provide it in our REST client body window. And we'll change this meter ID. This is our electric meter ID. We need to change it to reference our water meter ID. We are authenticated into our primary account, and our content type is application XML. Okay, we've submitted water consumption data, and we can see that the system created unique identifiers for each month of water data that we've added to our water meter. And that concludes adding water data to our water meter. In step 8c, we'll be adding waste data to our waste meter. This XML will vary greatly as compared to the XML we provided for our electric meter and our water meter. Under our waste meter, we have a start date and end date. We have the number of times that our bin is emptied for our waste. We specified 4 in this month. We have the average percent full, which is 75%. And we have the cost defined. Because we're disposing this, the system's also expecting to see disposal destination information. This is telling the system the destination of our disposed waste. We're saying that 25% is going to incineration, 25% is going to the landfill, 5% is going to unknown, and 45% is going to waste to energy percentage. It's important that all of these values add up to 100. If they don't, we'll receive a schema error, and we'll have to edit the schema to ensure that they all equal 100. So I've got 12 months of waste data here, starting on January 1st of 2018 and ending in December 31st of 2018. So that gives us a year of our consumption data. So we'll take this data, and again, if you want to know the specific details as to what can be added for waste data meters, go ahead and take a look at the schema a little closer. And the schema will tell you exactly what you can add and what you cannot. We'll take this waste data, and we'll paste it within our REST client. And we need to tell the system which meter we want to add this waste data to. So our waste data ID we saved earlier when we created it is this value ending in 9. We'll take this URL, we'll paste it into our REST client. which is waste data and not consumption data. We're posting waste data to the system, so we use a post call. And then our content type remains as application XML. We're also using the authentication. We're authenticating into our primary account. So we'll go ahead and send this information to the system. And the system liked the information we sent. It provided IDs for each individual month of waste data. Again, if you wanted to edit or delete specific months, you can reference this ID within subsequent calls. So we have successfully created waste data, we've created energy data, our electric data, and we've created water data. Now that we have our property created on behalf of our customer, we have a property use for the customer's property. We also have all of our meters created under the property. We are ready to pull metrics. So to retrieve performance metrics, we'll use a get call. And we will specify that we want to pull the metrics from a specific property ID. And the metrics URL has parameters that include the year and the month. So when you pull metrics from the Portfolio Manager system, you're pulling metrics for a specific annual period. When you provide a year and a month, this is the annual period ending in that month and year provided. So for example, I've included the year as 2018 and the month is 12 or December. So this information that I'm asking or requesting back from the system is all data for specified performance metrics starting from January 1st of 2018 and ending on the last day of the month specified here on the 31st of December. There's two types of measurement systems. These are basically the units that you can display your metrics in. You can display the units in EPA metrics, which is closely related to standard units of measure such as kBTU or square feet. You can also use metric. So metric will be closely related to the metric unit of measure system. And I will use gigajoules and square meters and other metric units of measure. The metrics we like to specify can be specified within a specific header. We need to specify header information as PM metrics. And then we have a comma-separated list of all the metrics that we want to send to the system and retrieve data from. So all of these metrics that we've specified here will return an annual figure. The score, source intensity, the water intensity total, and the total waste disposed and diverted intensity. So we've added all the necessary property information to retrieve our source intensity, our water intensity, and our total waste disposed and diverted intensity. So our property ID was saved. As this value ending in 4. We can update the URL to include the property we'd like to pull metrics from. Metrics are always pulled at the property level. And we'll take the parameters and the URL defined, paste it into our REST client. Because we're pulling metrics from the system, we want to run a get. And we won't be using content type application XML. We're not posting any data to the system. We need to tell the system to use the PM metrics header. And then the attribute value would be the comma separated list of all the metrics that you'd like to you'd like to pull. If you like a complete list of all the metrics that are available for a specific property, you can navigate to the API documentation homepage. Access the test environment link if you're curious about what's available within the test environment. Go to reporting services. Go to the Get Property ID Metrics link. And then click on this link here. So this link will provide you with an XLS or Excel document that will list out all of the metrics that are available within the Portfolio Manager system. So we'll press OK here, and we'll go ahead and submit the call. Don't actually need that. It's from the previous call. And we can see that we have retrieved performance metrics. So we can see that this specific property was actually unable to retrieve an Energy Star score metric. We can see that within the response of XSI:nil equals true. But we were able to retrieve a source intensity metric of 0.06 gigajoules per meter squared. This value is actually a superscript 2 in HTML. Our water intensity total metric did also provide an annual metric value of 0.11, and that's meters cubed per meter squared. And our total waste disposed and diverted intensity also was able to calculate correctly and provide an annual metric of 153.775. If we want to take a closer look at this property and determine why the property was unable to retrieve an Energy Star score, we can navigate over to the API documentation homepage. And if you have a property within the beta environment that's unable to retrieve a score, as we do, we'll go to the reporting services and then go to the Get Property ID, Reasons for No Score. So this specific documentation will allow you to dig into individual properties and see why the property is unable to retrieve a score. Parameter information here is not required because we only have one annual period of interest for this property. And that's the annual period ending in 2018. So our property ID is this value ending in 4. We're going to get. And we can see that there are various alerts for this property. The first alert is saying that the number of workers on main shift value is too small. It's giving us our value, and it's saying that to have a score, you must have a value that is greater than 1. And it looks like we have a value of 0.3. And there's other errors here that we should review and take a closer look at, and we can edit our use detail information for accuracy if there's any errors in our use detail information. But if those were correct values, unfortunately, we're not eligible to receive a score. And we'll have to look at other metrics such as the site and source EUI or weather normalized EUI to evaluate our property's performance. So we have successfully pulled metrics for our property. Starting in step 10, we'll begin the process of sending simulated connection and share requests from our customer account to our primary account. In order for your customers to share property data or meter data with your account, they must first be connected with your account. To do this in the front end of the live version of Portfolio Manager, the users simply go to the Contacts section and they search for your account, and they click your account to connect, similar to other social media platforms. Because there's no front-end user interface for the beta environment, we are going to send these connection requests through web services while authenticated into our customer's account. When we created our customer by default was already connected with us. So in step 10, we need to terminate that defaulted existing connection. So this termination of the connection, the existing connection, can be performed through a post, and it's a /disconnect/account, and then the account ID here is your customer's account ID, and you have the ability to keep shares or remove the shares. When we created the property on behalf of our customer, the property was automatically shared with our account as well, so we want to terminate those shares as well as the connection, and we want to say keep shares equals false. So we need to update the URL with the customer's account ID that we saved when we created the customer's account ID. And this customer account ID is this value ending in 2. And we'll post this disconnect while authenticated into our primary account. We also need to tell the system why we're disconnecting. So the system is expecting a terminate share response with a note. For our testing purposes, we've just included disconnecting to test a simulated connection request and property share request. We'll take this XML, we'll add it to our XML body, and we'll add our content type application XML header. Go ahead and post the disconnect, and the system accepted the disconnect. So we are now disconnected, and our existing shares no longer exist for the property that we created on behalf of our customer, and we are no longer connected to our customer. This will set us up in the steps to follow. In step 11, we'll be submitting a simulated connection request from your customer's account to your main account. So we'll be authenticating into our customer's account, and we'll be submitting a simulated connection request from our customer account to our primary account. So the account ID within the /invite/account/account ID is the account ID of our main account. It's your main account, so your primary account's account ID. When we created our main account's primary ID, when we created our primary account, the system responded with an ID ending in 1 here. So our primary account's account ID is 268941, and yours will be different. It's a unique identifier that the system created that points to our primary account. So we're sending a connection request via post. We'll update the URL that points to our specific primary account ID, and we're going to be authenticating into our customer's account. So our customer's account we saved in our worksheet. Customer's username was Jane Doe sample123. The password is sample123. And we'll post the simulated connection request. So we've now sent a connection request from our customer account to our primary account. In step 12, we'll be retrieving the pending connection list while authenticated into our main account. Since we submitted a connection request from our customer account to our main account, we should be able to see this connection request when we pull the list of pending connection requests within our primary account. We can pull our pending connection requests by running the WS test /connect/account/pending/list. So these are all the pending accounts that would like to connect with our primary account. Take this URL and we'll run a get on it. And we will authenticate into our primary account. Our primary account's username and password was saved in our worksheet. Sample John Doe account. Password is sample123. And we'll run a get, and we can see that the system returned information, and it looks like we do have a pending connection request. So we've confirmed that our customer account sent us a connection request. And we can see that the important information that was provided to us is the account ID of the customer. In the next step, we'll go ahead and accept this connection request, and we'll specifically use this account ID that's shown within this connection request. So now that we have verified that we have a pending connection request delivered to our primary account, in step 13, we are going to be accepting that pending connection request by passing in the customer's account ID that was displayed within the pending connection list that we pulled in step 12. So our customer's account ID that we viewed within our pending connection list is this value within the connection list ending in 2. It's the same value as the customer account ID that we stored in our XML worksheet. Customer account ID. It's value ending in 2. And we want to tell the system that we want to accept this simulated connection request that our customer has sent us. Again, if you connect with a customer, then you'll be able to, the customer will be able to share properties with you, and you'll be able to create properties on behalf of your customer. It's basically just a handshake between you and your customer. So because we're accepting, we will be using a post method. We also need to provide the correct authentication. So we're accepting as our main account or our primary account using the authentication information of our primary account. We'll provide acceptance XML with a note that says your connection request has been verified and accepted. And we will ensure that the authentication information that we're using is our main account, which, yes, it is sample John Doe account. Sample123 is the password. Okay, so we are accepting this connection request that was sent on behalf of our customer. And we've forgotten the content type. So the content type is easily forgettable. Because we're adding XML here, we need to tell the system what type of content it is, so it's application XML. If you forget the content type, you'll receive a 415 error, and the error description will say content type text/plain, character set, UTF-8 is not supported. So we'll add the content type, and we'll submit our post, and the system approved of the service, and we now have a connection between our customer account and our primary account. In step 14, we'll be submitting a simulated property share request from our customer account to our primary account. So we will be authenticated into our customer's account, and we'll be submitting the service that specifies the account that we want to send the property to and the specific property that we want to share. So our account ID that we want to send this to, while authenticated into our customer's account, is the account ID of our main account, or the primary account that we first created. So our account ID of our main account is this value ending in 1. And our property ID is the same property we've been working with. We've saved up top. It's value ending in 4. So this call is basically submitting a simulated share request while authenticated into our customer account to our primary account. And we're specifying the account to send the share request. We're also specifying the property. In this call, you can also specify the permissions that you'd like to grant from your customer account to your primary account. To specify the permissions that you'd like to submit to your primary account, we'll have to include parameter information within this URL. This parameter information can be found within the API documentation homepage by accessing the test environment API link, navigating to the connection share services section, and then accessing the invite account ID, property ID. So this is the call we're using to simulate a share request of a property. So we can see that there's an additional parameter here that points to the access level. And we can see the documentation tells us that valid values are read or read write. We want to give full permissions from our customer to our primary account. So by default, we're using read write, but just for demonstration purposes, we'll specify read write within the parameter here. Read underscore write. So we've defined which account we want to send this property to. We've defined which property we'd like to send the share request for, and we've defined what permissions the share request will contain. So we'll take this URL and we'll submit the URL while authenticated into our customer's account. And it is a post. And our authentication should be our customer's account. Customer's username was Jane Doe Sample 123. And our customer's password, Sample 123. Okay. And we don't need any XML information, as all information the system needs has been provided within the URL. And we will submit the share request. The system accepted the share request, and we have now successfully simulated a sharing request sent from our customer account to our primary account. If you'd like to also see what the meter shares look like and you want to send a simulated meter share request, there's an optional step 14A, and all you would do is replace the / property ID with the specific meter ID that you'd like to submit the share for. In step 15, we want to authenticate into our primary account and run a list of all of the pending share requests for properties that have been delivered or sent from customers to the primary account. We can do this by running a get /share /property /pending /list. This is similar to the get pending connection lists, but we want to see the pending property shares that have been delivered to our account. The connections, the properties, and the meter shares will sit in a pending state until you address them. So you can accept or reject the connections or the shares but until you accept or reject them, they will sit in a pending state on your account. So we want to authenticate into our primary account. We want to run our pending property share list. It's basically just a get call. We want to do this while authenticated into our primary account. Okay, and we can see the system did pick up a single pending property share. We can see that a property ID has been provided, and we can see that we had successfully passed in read-write permissions. If we had specified read within the parameter when we submitted the share request, this pending property list would show read instead of read-write. We can see where the property came from. We can see all the details about the property, and we can also see audit information associated with that property. And the next step will be ready to accept the property share. In step 16, we are ready to accept the property share that we delivered from our customer's account to our primary account. We can do this by specifying the property ID within a share /property /property ID URL. The property ID is the same property we've been working with, and it's visible within our worksheet, but it's also visible within the get pending property list call that we ran to take a look at all of the pending properties that we have for our specific account. So we'll take this property ID and we'll update property ID within step 16's URL. And we'll be accepting this property share. And to accept a pending property share, we need to specify the action, which is accept. You can either accept or reject. If you would like to reject, it would be reject. We will be accepting the property share that we had delivered from our customer account to our primary account. The note element is optional. You can include a note if you'd like to say, thank you for your share, thank you for your business, thank you for submitting the property share. It's optional. It can be whatever you'd like. So we'll take this sharing response XML, bring it over to our web services REST client within the Firefox browser, and we will post while authenticated into our primary account. And this is our primary account. And yes, we were able to successfully accept the property share that was delivered from our customer's account to our primary account. If we want to go ahead and check that we have permission to view the property, we can run a get on the property by using the following link. The system did return all the information for our property, and we have access to this property. So we have successfully shared and accepted a property from our customer account to our primary account. Steps 17, 18, and 19 here are optional. We did run step 17 to pull the property share to make sure that it was established, and we ran a get on the property after we accepted the sharing request. Step 18 would retrieve a list of pending meter shares. This is similar to the list of pending property shares. And step 19 would accept the pending meter share, which is also similar to the acceptance of the pending property share. Again, when you accept, you need to include XML that says whether you accept or reject. And after you accepted if you decided to submit a simulated share request for your meter and accept the meter, You can also verify that you have access to the meter by running a get call on that specific meter.